I'm not going to get all pompous on you, but to become president of the party I first joined as a teenager a quarter of a century ago is a massive honour, and I'm unbelievably grateful. I'm also unbelievably grateful to Susan Kramer, the Baroness Susan Kramer, who contested the election with me. Susan was a fantastic candidate, pushed me all the way, and the contest was exactly what we needed at exactly the time we needed it. And so, Susan, thank you. My vision for my time as your president is to give us a voice that is distinctively ours, to give you the belief and passion you need to win hearts, minds, votes, seats, and a referendum at this challenging time. My focus will be on being a critical friend to the coalition, a champion of Liberal Democrat principles, a voice for our ideals, committed to the coalition, but besotted with my party. Shall we be honest? Shall we be honest and say that this time last year, we were not all going back to our constituencies to prepare for government? We were digging in fact, for the fight of our lives. I spent just 2 or 3 hours at the last spring conference, turned up, made a speech, had 2 pints, got the train back up north, and was back on doorsteps in Kendal first thing in the morning, and it didn't do me any harm. But last March, most pundits were writing us off again. But the media and our opponents made a fatal error. They underestimated Nick Clegg. I was in Manchester. As the first leaders' debate took place last April. And it was a night I will never forget. Before our eyes, Nick transformed the entire general election. Until that moment, the Conservatives were cruising to a 60-seat majority. Nick completely blew that apart. The Lib Dem cats from Sheffield put right amongst the establishment pigeons. Make absolutely no mistake. Nick Clegg was all that stood between Britain and a majority Tory government, and he did not let us down. Nick changed the election, and the election changed everything. So, a balanced parliament. You should be careful what you wish for. I caught the early train down from Oxenholme, the Lake District, at 6 o'clock in the morning on the Saturday after polling day. And I was hoping to get some sleep on the journey down, but I'd forgotten that it was the FA Trophy final day at Wembley, and that Barrow were in the final. Yes, hello Ray. Which meant that my train was packed with Barrow fans who were A, having an intensive liquid breakfast, and B, extremely keen to share with me their views on what should happen in a hung parliament. So, I got absolutely no sleep, but plenty of advice. Now, I remember one particularly good piece of wisdom that one guy gave me. He said, "This is your chance, Tim. Tell Nick not to bottle it." And I couldn't have put it better myself, because the arithmetic was clear. Labour plus Lib Dems equaled 11 short of a majority. That option was off. Next option? Well, we could have sat on our hands. And you know exactly what would have happened then. A second election in October, a Conservative victory, no electoral reform, no tax cuts for the poor, big tax cuts for the rich, no banking levy, no pension increase, and billions wasted on replacing Trident. And would we now be being praised for keeping our hands clean at a time of necessary cuts? Not a flaming chance. We would have been the lily-livered Lib Dem bottlers, the first time in 40 years when the parliamentary arithmetic had given us a chance to take responsibility and we walked away from it, too chicken to go into the big lead. Our credibility would have been shot to bits, our electoral standing in tatters. That is what the parallel universe looks like, and it is not pretty. So we absolutely did the right thing. But you might have noticed that it's not all been plain sailing. You know, before the election, the governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, said that whoever came into power would have to make such dreadful decisions that they'd then be out of power for a generation afterwards. A generation. Mind you, Given we're normally out of power for 4 generations, that sounds quite a good deal. We should get it in writing. Remember Joe Grimmon's words, his famous words at the Scarborough Liberal Assembly in 1965. We had about 10 seats, 5% of the vote. To say we were on the fringes was to overstate our position. And Joe said, in times of war and in times of doubt, generals were told to march their troops towards the sound of gunfire. And he added, I intend to march my troops towards the sound of gunfire. Well, guess what? We are now in that battle, in the thick of it, amidst the gunfire. And that means we're sometimes going to get winged or wounded, but far better to be here in the middle of that than to be an irrelevance, an observer, marching towards that distant sound. So it's time to look forward and stop apologising. We're just 8 weeks off the most important ballot for our party in living memory, the Fairer Votes referendum. And I do not have enough hyperbole in my vocabulary to express how incomparably essential it is that we win the referendum. This is it. Electoral reform within our grasp for the first time in our lifetimes, and if we lose, for the last time in our lifetimes. And it looks to me like we are marginally ahead in the referendum. You know, 1-0 up with 5 minutes to go, which is a terrifying place to be. You can sit there, hold your breath, pray that the other side don't scrape a jammy goal, will the ball away from your own net, panic and feel like a spectator, utterly passionate about the result, but utterly powerless to affect it. Or you can realise that you are not a spectator. You are a player. You want to win the referendum, then we get out there and score the second goal and put it beyond doubt. So please, fill in the form on your seat now and hand it to the stewards as you leave. Because yes, maybe we are 1-0 up. It's ours to lose. But make no mistake, we can lose. And Hilary Stevenson and I were talking last night, and we decided we're not having that. And for those of you who are still unconvinced, and we know you are, the STV Ultras, just look at AV as the semi-final, all right? Indeed, as the stars of the Fairer Votes campaign line up, Joanna Lumley, Honor Blackman, Colin Firth, Stephen Fry, Helena Bonham Carter, they are achieving the absolute impossible. They are making electoral reform glamorous. Now, I mean, to be fair, those guys on the dagger stand have perfected their own brand of single transferable chic over the last 60 years, but we finally achieved crossover. We no longer need to be ashamed. Electoral reform is groovy. Alternatively, the No campaign is positively Z-list. They asked Lembit and he wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. He said it damages credibility. I checked that with him beforehand, by the way. We are extremely lucky to be here in Sheffield. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Paul. Indeed, the home of the full Monty. Home of Nick Clegg. Hey, now then, boss, I've had a great idea for a fundraiser. And as Paul rightly said, the home of the Human League, not just the Human League, ABC and Heaven 17, the new romantic capital of the Western world. A place where real men wore eyeliner, gold lame, and 2 haircuts at the same time. At least that's how it was in the 1980s. And now, the 80s was the decade I grew up in. I am, I guess, one of Thatcher's children. I was raised in Lancashire when unemployment was above 4 million. And much of that unemployment was utterly avoidable and unnecessary. Margaret Thatcher pursued a deliberate policy of increasing joblessness in order to keep down inflation and to subdue the trade union movement. Avoidable human misery was created by a government that did not understand the North and cared about it even less. My mum, a single mum, spent time out of work. I remember the day when the penny dropped with me and my sister that we were poor. And it was the day when Mum cancelled The Guardian because we couldn't afford it. It's true. Indeed, many Lib Dems today are seriously considering cancelling The Guardian, but for different reasons. Polly Toynbee. That'll be the right-wing Owenite splitter, Polly Toynbee. For those with long enough memories, thank you. See, I joined the Liberals out of a desperate desire to see Britain run fairly, to see economic policies that serve the interests of the people, especially the poorest. I joined a party that was unmistakably a radical, social liberal, progressive, internationalist, Green party. In the old language, some people might even say that I joined a party of the left. And that is the party I still belong to. But I don't need to tell you that outside this conference centre there are people protesting. And it's not good enough for us just to label them as trots. And even so, is it a crime to be angry at cutbacks, to be fearful about austerity, to resist the pain that is to come? The kind of people who shrug and say they rather like the cutbacks are the people whose families are not personally affected. And you know what? I'm angry about the cuts. I'm angry about the reason we are making these cuts. Labour's enduring legacy, far worse even than the Iraq War, is their decision in 1997 to deregulate the banks, to out Thatcher, Mrs. Thatcher, to idolise the markets. Never let them forget. They idolised the markets. They made greed a virtue. They stoked up a fake boom. And then they left office and changed their tune, and some of them are outside. Labour spent 13 years in power behaving like Tories and now 10 months in opposition behaving like trots. And they deserve to be derided and ridiculed for both. Talking of Tories, our valued coalition colleagues. Like us, the Tories have this phenomenon of having a party leader who is also running the country. As Conservative Party leader, David Cameron has made speeches recently on what he said was the failure of multiculturalism, and then another expressing his view that the entire public sector should be opened up to private competition. Lots of people got worked up about those speeches. I didn't. As Conservative Party leader, David Cameron has every right to say those things. And as Liberal Democrat president, I have every right to say that he is wrong. You see, if you listen to some people, then apparently because I'm in coalition with the Conservatives or in bed with the Tories, then I must be a Tory. Are they mad? Look, for flip's sake, I share a bed with my wife. It does not make me a woman. You see, the Tories think that the cuts are long overdue, that the main problem is that we face a bloated, overgrown state. I don't think that at all. Let's not pretend that anything more than a fraction of the cuts are in waste. No. Lib Dems are not shrinking the state, but shelving the unaffordable, temporarily. Once we have rescued the economy, we should aim to restore investment, to take vital services back off the shelf. That must be our ambition, and we should say so loudly. So here we are fueled by our passion for fairness and our passion for the communities we serve. We nod politely at the big society, knowing that we've been doing community politics since before half the cabinet was born, and we turn and face the elections in May in Scotland and Wales and in local government, and the Fairer Votes referendum, knowing that these are the biggest and hardest challenges we have ever faced. You know, I told you last year you had to work your socks off to win at the general election. Well, the good news is that it worked, but guess what? You're ahead of me. You will have to outfight, out-deliver, out-canvass, out-stakeboard, outspend, outthink, and out-campaign your opponents this next 8 weeks, even more than before, because if we do not, we will not win. We will have to answer for our performance in government. We will have to reconvince many of our supporters. We'll have to deal with negative attacks. We have to sharpen our messages, but we absolutely can and will be successful. Do you look at the polls, look at the media, and curse the negative attacks and curse your luck? Well, don't. Get out there and make your own luck. There may be a trend, but trends are there to be booked. Go home and book them. right.
can take another bite.
You do that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hold on.